building today upon section 2.6, which was fear and conflict, and moving on, but the two interweave with one another. So I want to review two statements from the prior section 2.6, and then we'll move on to 2.7. I'm going to ask David if he would read these.
The correction of fear is your responsibility. When you ask for release from fear, you are implying that it is not. You should ask instead for help in the conditions that have brought the fear about. These conditions always entail, one, a willingness to be separate. At that level, you can help it. Two, you are much too tolerant of mind wandering. Three, and are passively condoning your mind's miscreations. Four, the particular result does not matter, but the fundamental error does. The correction is always the same. Before you choose to do anything, ask me if your choice is in accord with mine. If you are sure that it is, there will be no fear.
Mm-hmm. I find in this paragraph is a very clear message, but people do not want to hear it. So it would be close your mind or misunderstand or just brush over this rather than take it to heart. The correction of fear is whose responsibility? Yours. And rather than asking spirit to be released for fear, which implies that it's somebody else's responsibility, instead, you should ask for help in correcting the conditions that brought about fear in the first place. We need to get to the root of the problem, not the symptom. The symptom is the next fearful thought that occurs in your mind. We need to get to the root of the problem, which is, why is fear occurring in your mind at all? And there are listed right here 4 reasons why fear is occurring in your mind. It's referred to as a fundamental error. And since this is the first step is recognizing how to correct fear. This fundamental error must be corrected if we're to make progress on future steps. So please go back and review these until you understand it well enough to explain it to another miracle student. David?
You appreciate the real power of the mind, and no one remains fully aware of it all the time. However, if you hope to spare yourself from fear, there are some things you must realize, and realize fully. The mind is very powerful and never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Every instant it is creating. You prefer to believe that your thoughts cannot exert real influence because you're actually afraid of them. There are no idle thoughts. All thinking produces form at some level.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a realization. The mind is very powerful. It was given to you so that you might appreciate all creation and remain in communication with all things. Very powerful. The separation is the idea that you'll do your own thinking independent of all that. You'll find your own plan separate from the creator's mind. So that was some of the ideas we went over in the previous section. Tonight, we're going to be reading about cause and effect, but many of the ideas from fear and conflict are going to continue to be reaffirmed and echoed throughout the remainder of this course. So fundamental is the error that we're not going to just brush by it. We're going to keep emphasizing it. So with that, we'll move on to our new content. David?
You may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful. I have already indicated that you cannot ask me to release you from fear. I know it does not exist, but you do not. If I intervene between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with a basic law of cause and effect. The most fundamental law one there is.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was supposed to be a superscript one. Yeah. The most fundamental law there is.
The most fundamental law there is. I would hardly help you if I depreciated the power of your own thinking. This would be in direct opposition to the purpose of this course.
Okay, so this is a really important idea, and look at the, oh yeah, okay. So who's making you fearful?
You.
Persisting in making yourself fearful. So you can't, if you're doing it to yourself, you can't ask to have spirit stop you from doing what you have decided to do to yourself. To intervene, let's say you decide you want to do something with your life. If spirit were to intervene there between your thoughts and their effects, this is cause and effect, it'd be tampering with the basic law of cause and effect, which is fundamental to how creation works. We'll have more to say on that in a moment about the cause and effect relationship as fundamental to the universe. But our focus right now is if you persist in making yourself fearful, then the effects, the results of that are your own. You cannot ask spirit to undo that. It would be a way of depreciating the power of your mind, not honoring the power of your mind, to take away the effects of what you decided to do for yourself. So therefore, we're back to what we read a moment ago. Ask instead to remove the conditions that brought about the fear in the first place, allowing your mind just to freely wander anywhere, passively condoning it when it wanders into miscreations and darkness, and passively accepting the separation as a normal state. These are fundamental errors, and the purpose of this course is to help you correct those errors so that we can move forward. So fundamental law is your thoughts and their results, which is the cause you decided of your own free will, what thoughts to entertain. And then they have results. In some cases, if you entertain mistaken thoughts of emptiness or guilt or judgment, then the results will be, you will have feelings of fear, attack, and resentment. So we need to change. So therefore, we need to change our entire thought system. Heidi?
I understand that I can't ask the Holy Spirit to remove my fears, but is the Holy Spirit able to heal my mind, which creates the fears?
Yes. Yes. Matter of fact, that's exactly what we're going to be asking Holy Spirit to do, is to bring me healing so that I stop making fears for myself.
Perfect. Thank you.
You got it. Very good, Heidi. Oh, by the way, Heidi, offline, someone said, man, Heidi's questions are so helpful. Helpful. I'm really glad when she asked them. Just wanted you to have that feedback.
Thank you.
Richard?
Yeah, hi. This ties into something that I went through today. I know it's the reality or the emotion or thought that's inside of me. The unreality is always changing the reality of a situation. And it takes me a long time. It's like I got to talk myself down in order to have, let's say, an ongoing, say, spiritual dialogue, meaning there's trauma. How is this? I believe it can be worked with. The trauma inside of me that I experienced over, over time, over a period of time in my life.
Mhm.
And it's sometimes a trauma is there, and I react, and I know I shouldn't be doing it, but the trauma is trying to get its own way.
Right.
It's almost like a singer's the untethered soul, where I have the opportunity to meet the challenge,
Mhm.
but instead I have the choice whether to stay in a space of fear or turn it over to the Holy Spirit. And
Right.
that's tough sometimes because my ego says, fight your way through this.
Mhm.
It's not a state of paranoia. It's a state of ancient history that I've been walking around with inside of myself.
And that's the conditions we're looking to correct. If ancient history is still arising in your mind today and so to speak, re-traumatizing you, we need to ask Spirit to teach us how for that to stop. And you have a part in that. You're not a passive participant. You're an active participant in following the teachings of Spirit so that we don't keep being re-traumatized. And so we'll go into that a bit more as we progress in the course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Just adding one thing about what Richard just said and what you just said, in looking at the conditions that underlie the fear, would it not be looking at the thoughts instead of the feeling, the thought underneath the feeling, the trauma that drives that feeling, and reversing that thought, almost like affirmation, turning it around.
It is, and you're right on, Kathy, and the language can get a little tricky.
Yeah.
So what I the best I can do with it, Kathy, is say that there's a set of beliefs that underlie the thoughts and feelings, and we need to modify those beliefs, which then have an impact on the thoughts and feelings that go along with them. And so that's why we're here in a curriculum, learning a new set of beliefs that I'm not a victim of the world I see. That my mind is powerful and that I can choose again. And then, so first we change the belief, the thought system, and then the thoughts and feelings that occur on a momentary basis go along with it, change with it.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to say was the first sentence is amazing. You may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful. It kind of is the whole thing. Like I felt like the whole course, I felt like I was, when I read something like that, I was going 180 degrees in the wrong direction, like 150 miles an hour down 95, and I needed to go the opposite direction at the same speed. So I had to flip on a dime, and I felt like the course could do that. And what I needed to do was throw everything I could, all my beliefs, everything into the course. I had to do everything the course was saying. I wanted to do as much helpful things as I could, volunteering, etc., and do the lessons and do the text and do as much as I could in society, talking to people, everything about the course, and just delve completely into it to turn myself around, because that sentence says to me it all. It's our responsibility to change our thinking.
Mhm. It really does. Thank you for testifying to that. And please, everyone here, she was willing to turn all her beliefs over. The things that you hold back are the things that hold you back. Susie?
I just wanted to add, when I was listening to Richard talk about trauma and stuff like that, I mean, it says right in the course that we are dismantling a thought system that has dominated our lives for so many years. That's why I'm here, because my thinking was upside down, but it's not easy, or, it's just different. That's what the course says. It is easy. It's just different because my thinking has to be dismantled. It's a course in mind training. So I just have to be willing all the time, and the Holy Spirit will help. So
Indeed.
that's it.
Very nice summary. All right, we're going to go on.
It is much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. You may feel that at this point, it would take a miracle to enable you to do this, which is perfectly true. You are not used to miracle-minded thinking, but you can be trained to think that way. All miracle workers need that kind of training. I cannot let you leave your mind unguarded, or you will not be able to help me. Miracle working entails a full realization of the power of thought in order to avoid miscreation. Otherwise, a miracle will be necessary to set the mind itself straight, a circular process that would not foster the time collapse for which the miracle was intended. The miracle worker must have genuine respect for true cause and effect as a necessary condition for the miracle to occur.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple mentions here about guarding your thoughts. All miracle workers need the kind of training that results in you guarding your thoughts. So I have a brief and easy task that I would like to ask for you that you do by yourself offline. Write a few sentences about what it means for you to guard your thoughts. What does that mean? How would that look in your day? How would you, there's unguarded thoughts and guarded thoughts. What does guarding your thoughts look like? And my friends, this is the first step on a multi-step journey. It's not to say that you're going to go from unguarded thoughts to guarded thoughts after tonight. This is a learning journey. And all miracle workers need that kind of training. An unguarded mind can be of no help in working miracles. Okay, so we really don't, honestly, so much pivots on this early material. It's not wise to proceed without the foundation stone being set in the right position and oriented towards the right direction. You must guard yourself. And that is a part of a full realization of the power of thoughts. Your mind is powerful. There are no idle thoughts. All thinking produces form at some level. And so miracle workers need to have a genuine respect for cause and effect. Your thoughts and the results that stem out of those thoughts. And these are foundational. Your mind is a gift from God. It was intended for a very beautiful purpose. Along the way in the separation, we got all confused and communications broke down. But if we're to return the mind to perfect communications, we need to recognize its role in our lives. Joy?
Thank you. I think that maturity has a lot to do with it for me, because when I first got into the course, I think I was 32. And my thinking back then was more like, I'm going to do this. And then once I get the lessons done and I get it down, then I'm going to be good. And now, 33 years later, or whatever it is, now my thinking is, oh, this is a way of life for me. This is how I live my life every single day. And as long as I do this every single day, I'm a little bit more saner and a little bit more peaceful. You know, it's like brushing your teeth. You know, it's not a once and done kind of a thing. And I just think that maturity has helped me to see it that way. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. I witnessed to that as well, Joy. Thank you. Heidi?
I've noticed that if I watch like Rupert Spira or Deepak or the Dalai Lama, before they speak, there's always a pause. And sometimes there's a long pause. I actually noticed it with you as well. So is that how we practice getting a full realization of our power of thought, to pause and let the Holy Spirit speak? Like, I understand why we need to do this, but I'm asking, how do we do it? Is it through pause?
Yeah, and that you're right on about it. I think Eckhart Tolle is a real demonstration of this. Sometimes 30 seconds will go by before he says the first word. And so it's a way of recognizing that a thought comes in your mind that may not be the thought you want to say. Matter of fact, this is what guarding your thoughts is. A thought comes in my mind. Is that something I want to consume and embrace and give my attention to? And as we said earlier, we need to learn to distinguish between right-minded and wrong-mindedness. And so, Heidi, what those individuals are doing is they're making a distinction. A thought comes to their mind, they're making a distinction, and then they're realizing, no, I'm not going to say those things. I'm going to wait until the thought arises that feels in accord with the light of the Spirit.
So that's what I need to practice doing, is that pause to get the thought coming from the Holy Spirit.
We would all do well to pause, yes, and not be in such a hurry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Noel? Oh, you're muted, Noel.
I thought Richard was before me.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Richard.
Noel.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
In terms of guarding one's thought, it seems to me that this is the only place for judgment. Judge whether this thought is worthy, is holy, is beneficent, and do I feel good with this thought or not? Those are touchstones to me.
Mhm. Yeah. And we're going to learn how to do that, not out of an intellectual judgment, but out of a sensitivity to Holy Spirit's guidance and direction. And so it almost becomes, I want to use the word lightly, intuitive. When you do something 1,000 times, you don't have to think about it very much. And so it just becomes in accordance with your understanding of light and love and life and gentleness and kindness. You just are using them as your guardrails. And anything that's outside of that is probably best, Heidi, that we pause until something comes up that is consistent with light and love and kindness and goodness and helpfulness. Yeah. And it was a really good catch, Heidi, that you realize, wow, those people are waiting for spirit, with what I would call waiting for the right message to come, and not simply going to say the first thing that occurs to them. Richard?
Yeah, hi, guys. This is really bringing up some stuff for me, and I'm feeling uncomfortable when I'm hearing answers. And each time I hear a new answer, there's something in me that says, they're confirming, Richard, that you have to change. This is a change that you need. I was a type of individual who would walk into anywhere with both guns blazing, meaning I was going to take over. If I didn't show it one way, it was in me. And what happens is when I do this work, it's completely foreign to me to be genuine.
Mhm.
To talk is easy, to be genuine. This is a new form of, I guess, genuinity, something. And I feel vulnerable because I'm not the leading player.
Yes.
And to take that back seat and say, uh-oh, I'm going to be overwhelmed. It's a state of not paranoia, but constant flux.
Yes. It is,
And
Richard.
that's the challenge. And you guys got me in the hot seat right now with this work. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it really is a state of constant flux. Joyce said it's a way of life. If you're in this program, then you are stepping forward from day to day, week to week. Static, fixed positions represent not growing, not learning, not progressing. And therefore, it's unstable to your ego, Richard, in that it's not familiar with what the past is, not the guide. It's what's emerging in the present. And the ego can't control that because it's not predictable what spirit will lead us to do in the present. And so it feels unstable in that sense. But what we will do is learn to put our trust in spirit guidance. And that's all we need. We don't formally, I'll speak personally, I put my trust in understanding the way things worked in the past and my own ability to predict them in the future. That was a misplaced trust. Now we're learning to put our trust in spirit's guidance in the present moment, and that'll give us the stability that we all need to feel. Okay, let's go on.
Both miracles and fear come from thoughts. If you are not free to choose one, you would also not be free to choose the other. By choosing the miracle, you have rejected fear, if only temporarily. You have been fearful of everyone and everything. You are afraid of God, of me, and of yourself. You have misperceived or miscreated us and believe in what you have made. You would not have done this if you were not afraid of your own thoughts. The fearful must miscreate because they misperceive creation, essentially miscreators. When you miscreate, you are in pain. The cause and effect principle now becomes a real expediter, though only temporarily.
You know, this is really amazing because this is a statement about the entire human race, the way we all start out here. And it's echoing something said yesterday, is that in the ego state now, we're talking about the confused state where our beliefs are centered on the idea of emptiness and separation from the creator, and I'm guilty and I'm not even welcome back there. And so I have to find my own way. That belief system, from that emerges a set of thoughts, which we'll call, and feelings, which we'll call miscreations. And your mind is afraid of those things. They are by definition, they are threatening. They are unstable. They are unreliable. They are unworthy of your love. And so we've got a most troubling state, which is we are afraid of the thoughts of our own mind. What could be more insane than to be, and so somebody else calls it, Mickey Singer, crazy roommate. It's like having somebody in your house that's a constant threat to you. Crazy roommates. So, and then from that basis, we project those fears out onto everyone and everything, including our including our concept of God. We project our fears outward into the world. We see the world as a threatening place. We come to see reality. This is all the confusion, obviously, not the truth. We come to see reality as a threat, and that includes God and spirit and everything else. So this is an error of beliefs that needs to be corrected. And the first thing is to square yourself with, okay, that's the way it is. I don't particularly like it, but I accept it as true of my fearful state of mind. And then when you realize that, because we have the power to change our mind, there's great motivation to get on to the next step and move forward with a plan to change the belief system for which we have anchored our lives and our identity upon. It's the news that would cause us to want to change. And now, one more thing that might be more obvious to longer term students. When your mind is miscreating all those fears, what they are is illusions. The particular illusions, the details of it, who it involves, what the circumstances are, really don't matter because no one illusion is more real than the other. They're all false. What matters is the fundamental error of the mind constantly miscreating, going unguarded and passively being used to generate fear. That matters. If you spend a lifetime of your mind generating fear, that error has an impact certainly on your happiness. But guess what? On the happiness of the people in your life and people around you as well. It has a huge impact. So all this is a realization that change is necessary. and that you are the central player in this willingness to change your belief system, we would say to change your mind. You're not going to be the guide to the direction, but every step along the way will only be taken with your consent. Let's go on.
Actually, cause is a term properly belonging to God, and his effect is his Son. This entails a set of cause and effect relationships totally different from those you introduce into miscreation. The fundamental conflict in this world, then, is between creation and miscreation. All fear is implicit in the second, and all love in the first. The conflict is therefore one between love and fear.
So the fundamental conflict of the human condition is the internal states of love and fear going on within the same mind and being essentially opposed to one another causes internal conflict, which is the opposite of inner peace. Inner conflict is the opposite of inner peace. And internal conflict comes about as a result of the mind going unguarded, being used to miscreate an illusory world of fear and pain. I'm sure you know there's plenty of examples of how the minds of men and women have been used to create an illusory world of fear and pain. We don't need to cite examples about that. So that hopefully everyone here understood. There's a secondary lesson that's right here. And if you're newer to miracles, this might be more difficult. I know it took me a long time before I understood it. So there are really two sets of cause and effect relationships. One is perfectly true. The creator, sometimes symbolized as the Father, the creator is the cause of all things, the divine holy cause of all things. And the sonship, of which you and I are all members, is the effect that he had on creation. He is the cause, we are the effect. That was done in an environment of perfection and eternity, and that cause-effect relationship, nothing can alter that. It's the most powerful thing ever. It's still pristine and perfect even now. You are pristine in the Creator's eyes, just as you were in the moment of creation. So that's usually capitalized in the Course as divine cause and effect. And then there's the other cause and effect, which you probably think more in terms of, if you're familiar with these things. Now we're going to descend down into the level of time and space and human beings and confusion and trials and errors and all that. And so we have the cause as being the belief systems in your mind and the thoughts that arise. And then the effects are the feelings and behaviors that stem from those thoughts. So if I believe you're all out to get me and hurt me, then my behavior is going to change. It's going to have an effect on me. And I'm liable to do things that are evidence that I'm deeply afraid that you're against me and you're going to hurt me. So that's an effect. So now we're talking about cause and effect on an entirely different level than we were a moment ago. And as we stated at the beginning of this section, it would, since my beliefs generated those thoughts and those effects, it would be a violation of a fundamental law for spirit to take that away from us. Instead, we should ask to change the conditions that brought about our generating thoughts of fear and pain and suffering and emptiness. So, this is the the cause and effect of the creator is perfect. It needs no help whatsoever. The problem, the fundamental conflict in this world is a misunderstanding of your role in generating thoughts and feelings in this world, and your willingness to undergo what I'll call divine therapy and have your mind changed through the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And simply said, somebody said today, I like to keep things simple. It's a conflict between your experiences and your feelings of love and your experiences of fear. And we want, obviously, to promote your feeling love and to stop your feeling so fearful. We're going to put an end, we're going to guard your mind so you no longer generate fearful thoughts, so that loving thoughts towards yourself, towards life, towards others become constant and full-time. And they fill your mind with what we'll call constructive powers, using your mind for good. Okay, so that's the title of our section, is cause and effect. But really, we're focused right now is on where the problem is, this fundamental conflict in our own minds between love and fear. These conflicts then get projected outward into the world, can show up in terms of violence and warfare and all kinds of unfortunate uses of the power of one's mind. So I'm going to skip over this summary here just so that we go on. We can come back to that later. I'm just restating in that summary some of the things that were just said. Let's go on.
It has already been said that you believe you cannot control fear because you yourself made it, and your belief in it seems to render it out of your control. Yet any attempt to resolve the error through attempting the mastery of fear is useless. In fact, it asserts the power of fear by the very assumption that it need be mastered. The true resolution rests entirely on mastery through love. In the interim, however, the sense of conflict is inevitable, since you have placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist. Nothing and everything cannot coexist. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is nothing, and love is everything. Whenever light enters darkness, the darkness is abolished. What you believe is true for you.
So I'm simply going to restate what I get from this. After a lifetime of investing in fearful thoughts and feelings and making choices based on being afraid and feeling pain and suffering, we cannot, the attempt to master fear is useless. We have already invested thousands of hours of our lives invested in thinking fearful thoughts and feelings. We do not need any more investment in that. The resolution that this program will foster is that instead we learn to become masters of love. And in order to do that, we have to divest ourselves of the applying ourselves into fear. Let me say it another way. We have to remove the old behaviors of generating fear so that we might then use our minds for the purposes of mastering love. We cannot do both at the same time. Invest in making your mind fearful and making your mind loving. You cannot serve two masters. It puts you in a position of believing in something that does not exist. And they both cannot be true. To believe in one, to believe in your ability to generate fear and believe in those illusions are true, is to not deny the power of love. So we need you to change your investment scheme and remove all investments from fear and place them all into love. Many of you already believe this and intend to do this. What this program says is an untrained mind can accomplish nothing. It takes more than your intention. It takes a training of your mind, because that's where the error has occurred. That's where you have the ability to change, is in your mind. And so it will require mind training. And as we all know, the lessons are, workbook lessons are the daily manual to keep your mind in a state of attention to these matters. A couple hands here. Susie?
I love the fact that it says in the interim, however, the sense of conflict is inevitable. And, that's true for me. And I like that it tells us that it's okay, that it is inevitable. Like I was sharing, I think, with Heather this morning, how, and I know we've talked about it here, even when the cage is open or, my hostage taker is removed, I'm still a little reluctant to walk out because I've lived a certain way for so long, even though I know it will be more peaceful and probably a whole lot better. There's a little sense of trepidation, or there used to be a lot more. It has dissipated a lot because the peace of God I felt, and that really is all that I want. But there was a lot of conflict. And I just, again, want to say that I love that it tells us it's inevitable.
Yeah, I really appreciate your pointing that out, Susie. And I will say I notice a number of students that maybe Course in Miracles for the first time, they get 6 months into it and they get caught there, Susie, in that being torn between the part of them that wants to move forward and the part of them wants to stay back. And many of them respond by just dropping out because the conflict is too much. And so my prayer is that all of us will hang in there. That doesn't last, but it can be experienced as very intense, internal, being pulled between your old false identity and the call of your new identity. David?
This may be rudimentary and foolhardy, but the last two chapters, fear and conflict and cause and effect, and what we're talking about here tonight, seem to me to be the entire crux of the course. That I can do this, if I can do this, that is the course. And one of the expressions that you hear sometimes is, well, you can't fix a broken mind with a broken mind. So I can't fix my broken mind with my broken mind. In other words, I can't deal with illusions through my illusory mind, but I can fix my broken mind with my higher mind self, my higher self mind, my real mind, my mind that is in touch with the mind of God, my mind that the Holy Spirit comes through. So can I not heal my mind in that way? Or is my mind not healed in that way?
Yeah, so it depends on what we mean by my mind, because David, a lot of people will say, I have a private mind. So it would be like David's individual mind.
No, we're talking about the bigger mind.
Exactly. Only through joining the bigger. The only problem here is a separation from the bigger mind. And so the solution is to rejoin the bigger mind, which is what the atonement is. So yes, the bigger mind is our the way we will heal. And to, maybe you didn't say it this way, but and this course isn't the only way that we can restore ourselves to the bigger mind. This course, however, does save a lot of time in being restored to the bigger mind. The course even says that many in the past, through a lifetime of devotion, have been able to restore to that state. But many of us don't have another lifetime here. We need a time saver. So yeah, the rejoining with the one mind is our source of healing. Heidi?
Yeah, I really want to thank Susie for bringing that up and your response, because I am living testimony that that's what I did. I mean, I know it's going to shock everybody, but I've actually been doing the course for 10 years. I used to have groups at my house, and I allowed my ego to take over, and I would leave, and then I would come back, and then I would leave, and it was relapse after relapse after relapse. And this is actually the longest that I've stuck to it. And I want to say that once you have a taste of the course, there's nothing worse than knowing what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and where to do it, and to not be able to do it because your ego is taken over. So I'm just really grateful that this time I'm not allowing that to happen. But thank you for acknowledging that, Susie. It's so true.
Thank you for that testimony, Heidi. Noelle?
Back to conflict, and Susie, I thank you too. For me, the experience of conflict is because it's such a shock to my belief system. It just shakes me up completely that I'm being asked to give up certain beliefs, conceptions, assumptions that I've had maybe all my life, or that I've taken in from other teachers that I respected highly, or was trained maybe even in some ways. So that's the source of the conflict for me. And it's also giving allegiance only to the course principles.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people really struggle just with that, Noelle. I have a lifetime of training, and now you're telling me I should reconsider whether or not that's useful going forward. And so I've dealt with this a fair amount. We're not against the training you had in the past. Whatever it was, it got you to this moment now. What we are in favor of is moving forward. And we're saying past training will hold you back. It's time, whatever benefit you could have gotten from it, you've gotten. Time to let it go and have it replaced by a message from the Holy Spirit. And so it's a good trade. No matter how valuable your old training is, this is a fair trade here. This is for our good. And it was for the sole purpose of helping us to move forward. Richard? You're on mute, buddy. Here, let me see if I can.
Okay, I have it now.
Got it.
I heard some really good things. And one thing that I heard is I cannot be in two diametrically opposed locations
Yes.
at the same time simultaneously.
Right.
And what I tried to do, when I heard it, it was said, first of all, it's not the thought, it's thought before the thought, the sponsoring thought.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's easier said than done. Coming from an intellectual, that's great. But this program unveils the intellect as a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
This work has to come from my gut, not just between my ears. And I said this before, and I mean it now because I'm experiencing it now. I can't deflate my ego with my own intelligence. It takes outside influences, outside events. So if I tried to do this course for many years, mono, but it can't be done. It cannot be done because I need peer pressure and influence from other individuals who are caught up. I guess I'll call it the work.
Uh-huh.
And if I don't have that, it's like going through, and I'll just end it here, looking for something, going through a drawer full of socks. And you got 100 pairs in there, and you're throwing each one aside to get to that particular sock that you want, which is at the bottom of the drawer. So it's a course of not doing for me, it's a course of undoing.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, to become vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to be willing to go on for me to the next thing. That's it.
I hear you, brother. It is greatly humbling to say, take a lifetime of learning and set it aside. That's not going to help you move forward from here. Let's go on.
The unwillingness to let one's darkness be seen or to submit error to light is a way of denying that the separation ever occurred. Like all pseudo solutions, this kind of distorted thinking is very creative but false.
So that passage would not be in the Foundation for Inner Peace edition, and it was my intention to remove it. So we'll go on.
In this sense, the separation has occurred, and to deny it is merely to use denial inappropriately. However, to concentrate on error is only a further error. The initial corrective procedure is to recognize temporarily that there is a problem, but only as an indication that immediate correction is needed. This establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately no compromise is possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up. It only seems to be abolished by degrees because time itself involves intervals that do not exist. Miscreation made this necessary as a corrective device.
So let's make sure we get the gist of here. There's always a lot of details, and one could spend 20, 30 minutes on every paragraph. That's not our intent here. So in the sense that our mind has made a poor choice and chosen darkness over light, in that sense, the separation has occurred. And to deny that our mind has made a mistake is really to use denial inappropriately. So we want to acknowledge, be willing to acknowledge when our mind has made an error, but not, okay, so that part is easy. We got that already. However, to concentrate on the error and to become preoccupied with the mistake is further error. That is not the goal of this course, is to become enmeshed in our own mistaken minds. The corrective procedure has a time component to it, which is that you temporarily recognize, wow, that was off. That thought, that feeling were not in accordance with my higher nature, were not in accordance with love and light. That was off. And you do that, how long does that take? 1 second or 2? So you recognize that there was something that just occurred to you that is not in accord with the higher mind. And that's an indication that a correction is needed. Notice how we immediately moved from a deviant thought to I need help. I need to correct. We're already on the way to solution, and only 1 second has gone by. Problem, I got a solution. The solution, however, is not something I do by myself and alone, but as David said, it's part of the one mind, the greater mind. And so by recognizing a correction is needed, this establishes a state of mind in which you're willing to accept the one mind of creation as your true safety point, as your true identity, in which you can accept the atonement without delay. There's the time component again. And I know that this can be done in seconds, and I'll illustrate it in just a second here. So that's the chief message that I want to bring to you here, is we need to learn not to stop making errors in our mind. That will come over time and with practice. But initially, when a foul thought or feeling arises, we recognize, oh my goodness, I used to call it a nasty gram. That's a nasty gram. And by the way, who generated that thought? My own mind, a nasty gram. But spend no more time concentrating on the error and immediately recognize, while there is a problem, there's also a correction that is needed. And then quickly realize that the Holy Spirit embodies that state of mind that is wholly pure and unconfused and united with all things, and that you are willingly and gladly choosing to identify yourself with that mind, not with the nasty gram that just occurred to you seconds before that. Now, that's one way of explaining it, and I think I could explain it a dozen other ways, but those are just different words for something that occurs very quickly, going from an ego thought to a realization you don't want that, you want to correct, and to an invitation to the to join again in the Holy Spirit. And to do this, how many times? Well, hopefully you do this every hour. And then once you do it every hour, you do it more than once every hour. And eventually it becomes a default reaction mode to disturbing thoughts and feelings. It's just you, by guarding your mind, you don't allow those feelings of emptiness and despair and lack of love to overwhelm you and flood you. You guard your thoughts and immediately recognize there's a problem and a correction is needed. And so one day when I became conscious of this happening, because often happens, you're not completely aware that you just dodged a bullet, you just dodged an ego thing. But this day I was aware of it. I've told the story before. I was moving about 40 miles an hour down North Lake Boulevard, keeping up with traffic, and this car was about to pull out, and it waited until I got within 15 feet of the car, and I'm moving 40 miles an hour, and then it pulls out in front of me. And it startled me because if I hadn't reacted immediately, we would have wound up crashed into each other. But I braked in time, and there was about 1 foot of space there, and my body immediately got flooded with fight or flight syndrome, adrenaline rushed. I was all mobilized by it because I was startled. And then a thought occurred to me. And that thought was very critical of the driver in front of me. All right. And it hadn't got to words yet, but that would have been the next thought, would be how I want to describe the driver in front of me that I'm upset with now. And then all of a sudden, I realized how that felt. It was like this anger in me that was about to, the guy's in the other car, he's not even going to hear what I say, but it was about to explode in my car. And I realized I recognized temporarily there's a problem, and that I didn't want to go there, that an immediate correction was needed. And immediately said, Holy Spirit, I join with you. And then the next words out of my mouth were, as I prayed for the person in front of me that they get home safely, because obviously they are at risk here. And all that happened, what I've taken all this time to explain, happened in about 3 seconds. I don't know. It was very fast. I submit that these things can happen all the time. We usually don't catch it. We just dodge it, and we're not fully able to describe all what happened. But for some reason, at that moment, it was all just very clear to me that it was all right there. And so it will begin with you. So back to learning this. If you guard your thoughts, you won't, and they will arise in your mind during this training period. It will be a thought that has teeth, that has anger and fear and threat and wants to attack. And you learn, you choose in advance not to entertain that, not to concentrate on these mistakes, but instead to be willing to ask for a correction. And you will learn to master these things over time. And as David said, this really is the core right here. Without mastering that skill of how to do with your own fearful thoughts and feelings, the rest becomes beautiful language and words and theologies and frameworks. But the fundamental, if the foundation is not solid, then we can't really build a beautiful structure on top of it. Noel?
I think that's amazing how you reacted it was like it was a reflex. The correction was a reflex.
Yes.
Had you been doing the course a long time?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That,
Yeah. No, I was totally the core. That it wasn't intellect because it was a reflex, Noel, and that's what our goal for everyone is, to develop a reflexive habit that's how you respond to dark thoughts and feelings,
yeah.
is
I
that you practice it enough so it becomes your go-to. Sometimes they call it in modern psychology default mode response. It's ingrained as a new habit. Now, first we have to break the old habit and then form a new habit. So there's a journey in this learning, but that's the goal, is to develop a habitual response.
Well, you caught yourself with the old habit
Yes.
and put the brakes on it, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing I'd like to say, going back earlier, I found the course because all the other techniques and trainings weren't enough. And I know of other people who, in other words, I was searching. I almost didn't know it at the time. And the way I found the course was very serendipitous, but story for another time. And I also know other people who, example, have been brought up in one discipline or another, and was supposed to be like sacrosanct, and we never question it,
Right.
but recognized, admitted finally to themselves, it wasn't enough. It doesn't solve the problems that are in front of me.
Right.
And so it's as if they put out a telegram to the world, I need something, and something came in. Talk about the mind being very powerful.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. David?
I have a quick traffic story that I'll say, but the lesson is a little different. The lesson in this one is there are no private thoughts. So I'm at a traffic signal a few months ago, and I'm sitting there in my normal lane, right where I'm supposed to be, and you go forward when the light turns green. And suddenly I say to myself, you know, I think this person to the left of me is unclear about what the proper lane is. I think he's going to go into my lane. When the light turns green, I'm going to just sit here and see what happens. And sure enough, the person went right across into my lane. If I had taken off in normal, I would have had a wreck.
These things will happen more and more frequently. We talked about it in the teacher's manual, these things that are difficult to explain under the normal assumptions of the world. Yeah. Thank you. Joy?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that, when we're having like attack thoughts, about the other driver or other people that are doing things that are upsetting to us, it's the attack thoughts that hurt us more than anything, because now there's another layer of guilt and another layer of expecting punishment. And so those attack thoughts, I think that's the most beautiful part of catching them instantly, because then we're preventing more self-attack by thinking those kinds of thoughts about our brothers and sisters.
Yes. Very good. Very clear, Joy. This is why we need to learn to guard our thoughts so that we don't continue down that path and that we save ourselves from the agony. We're going to move on here. David?
The statement, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life, needs only one slight correction to be meaningful in this context. He gave it to his only begotten Son. It should especially be noted that God has only one Son. If all his creations are his sons, every one must be an integral part of the whole sonship. The sonship in its oneness transcends the sum of its parts. However, this is obscured as long as any of its parts is missing. That is why the conflict cannot ultimately be resolved until all the parts of the sonship have returned. Only then can the meaning of wholeness in the true sense be understood. Any part of the sonship can believe in error or incompleteness if he so chooses. However, if he does so, he is believing in the existence of nothingness. The correction of this error is the atonement.
Mhm. So we will use the terms both in the singular and plural. There's the sonship, we are the sonship, we are the Son of God. We also use the term we are the sons of God. We don't have a different meaning. There's no clever hiddenness there. They're just the differences in S and plural and singular. The idea is that the sonship of, which is the effect of the creation, is in a state of oneness, and therefore there is only one Son in true spirit, not separate sons. So those are just the way we'll use those terms. Heather?
Yeah, I love that. I heard this someplace. It says that God so loved the world that he gave us each other.
I think that's very consistent with the Course. Yeah, that's the spirit of it. We're in this together. Thank you. David?
I have already briefly spoken about readiness, but some additional points might be helpful here. Readiness is only the prerequisite for accomplishment. The two should not be confused. As soon as a state of readiness occurs, there is usually some degree of desire to accomplish, but it is by no means necessarily undivided. The state does not imply more than a potential for a change of mind.
Mm-hmm. So there's a spiritual journey here. If I told you we're going to walk across America, get ready for this walk across America. Our readiness is a prerequisite for actually accomplishing that. But the accomplishment, when you get all the way across, is not the same as being ready. So we're not going to be confused. We want to focus on being ready. And there are these conditions that we have to learn, these fundamentals that we have to learn. And the most important one is, what direction are we going? And that's where we're at right now, is getting clear on the direction, getting ready, ourselves ready, armed with the knowledge and understanding that all along the way, we are going to need to learn to guard our thoughts and train our mind, and that there's a direction that the Holy Spirit will give us along the way. This points to that comment Susie had about, it doesn't mean that we're free of conflict. It does mean, though, that we've begun on a journey. So usually there's some degree of desire to make the journey, but that desire is not necessarily undivided. Richie spoke about this, feeling like there's part of his old self that is still wanting to have things the way it always had, which is to be in control. And at the same time, there's an awareness that his emerging spiritual self is moving in a different direction. So it doesn't mean that we've resolved that issue yet. And we said this is where conflict comes up, because you feel torn within yourself. One part, Susie said, to stay, even though the cell door is open, to continue living in your cell, versus the part of you that really recognizes freedom requires that you take up your bed and walk. So right now, within the theoretical framework that we're describing, we're talking about a state of mind that is just in potential for future change. We're getting ready for an enormous shift in mind. And the desire for some degree of change is a vital part of this. Later on, as we progress, our desire increasingly becomes less divided. The voice of the ego, the control scheme of the ego becomes quieter and quieter. It becomes starved of our attention. And so therefore lacks time in our mind. So that's what we call readiness. We'll go into the larger theme, which is to be ready, willing, and able to listen, learn, and do. We'll take that another time, but it begins with the first step is readiness. Noel?
Yeah, it occurred to me that willingness, I like willingness more than readiness. Willingness seems to be a few degrees more open than readiness.
It is. It is. Yeah, we're just preparing our mind with ideas right now so that we're talking about the trip we're going to take. And that trip involves leaving our habit of generating fear in our own mind. There's not going to be any room for that. So we're not, you're right, Noel. We're at least theoretically, we're not focusing on yet on the willingness aspect. We will, however, be sure.
Confidence cannot develop fully until mastery has been accomplished. We have already attempted to correct the fundamental error that fear can be mastered, and have emphasized that the only real mastery is through love. Readiness is only the beginning of confidence. You may think this implies that an enormous amount of time is necessary between readiness and mastery. But let me remind you that time and space are under my control.
Mm-hmm. This is a very carefully designed curriculum in A Course in Miracles to take anyone who is ready, has at least some desire for change, and move them through to what ultimately results in a state of mastery, the mastery of love. That's the outcome. When you've mastered love, you've finished this course and you've really finished your task in this world when you've mastered love. So that's the outcome. But it begins with the first step. It's all and confident. So here's the bigger theme. You don't start out confident here. You start out doubtful, having moments of faith followed by moments of loss of faith. With uncertainty, being divided in your intentions and your goal. It'll show up in practicing your workbook lessons. They ask you to do these things and you don't get around to it because there's not a dedication there. Over time, we become more and more committed, undivided, dedicated, and with that, doubt starts to fall away, faith surges forward, and we become more certain, more confident, and eventually confidence develops fully once mastery has been accomplished. So that's where we're headed. That's the goal. And pay attention to this final statement here in this closing paragraph is, if you were to evaluate what we're talking about here in ego terms, you would say this is going to take forever. Or you'd say, I don't know that I have the ability to do these things, self-doubt. Well, and that might be true if you were on your own. If it was all you had available is your own wits, your own self. But we are in this together. There's one mind in all creation. The mind is very powerful, and we're talking about a restoration to your original state of awareness of the power of your mind that will no longer be miscreating, that instead will be used only for constructive acts of goodness and helpfulness. And that plus the Christ mind has the ability to rearrange situations so that they collapse the amount of time it would take to learn. And that's, I'll finish with that thought. This program is intended to accelerate your learning way beyond what you would be able to do by yourself. And you can experience that even in these Zoom classes, like, wow, that was a lot to learn in one session. The course is intended to accelerate your learning, and all you have to be willing to do is apply yourself to it, to be willing on a regular basis to apply yourself. And the outcome, the goal, is already clear in the mind of the Holy Spirit. And as we continue reading in the textbook, the goal will become increasingly clear to you if it's not already. That's all we're going to read today, because I noticed we're running over time, and I like to let the group go on time. So thank you all for your thoughts and attention. David underscored that this is foundational. Everything pivots around this, and I agree. Please review your notes, and remember, you owe me. I requested that you write down, what does it mean to guard your thoughts, and how are you going to learn to guard your thoughts? And then please send that to me. So David, thank you for reading. Thank you all for your sharing and for your attention. We'll see you again real soon. Namaste.
Namaste.
Everybody, love you all.
Namaste. Thank
Thank
you, Jonica.
Jonathan, could you
everybody.
stay on just for 1 minute?
Sure, Heidi.
Thanks. David,
Thanks,
thanks
David.
everybody.